Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra. The names echo through Hollywood history like thunder, shaping an era and casting a shadow that still lingers today. Brando, the brooding, mercurial genius, an actor who shattered conventions and rebuilt them in his image. Sinatra, the chairman of the board, the consummate showman whose voice and influence reached every corner of American culture. On the surface, their rivalry was the stuff of gossip columns and studio whispers. But behind closed doors, a secret war raged, one so intense, so personal, that it would stretch across decades and nearly derail both their legendary careers. What you're about to hear isn't rumor, but the meticulously documented account of two titans colliding, reshaping Hollywood with every insult, power play, and private threat. This is not the sanitized version you'll find in Hollywood retrospectives. Studios went to great lengths to bury the real story. But once you know what truly happened, how Brando's silence was both a shield and a sword, and why he finally chose to break it, you'll never watch their films the same way again. How did a casting dispute evolve into a vendetta involving organized crime, secret recordings, and the ultimate showdown between America's most powerful entertainer and its greatest actor? The answer, as always, begins in the most unlikely of places, on a movie set that nearly blew Hollywood apart. The Guys and Dolls battlefield. Brando, 30 years old, is the reigning king of Hollywood, with 2 Oscars and a reputation for reinventing what it means to act on screen. Sinatra, 9 years his senior, is basking in his own career renaissance, having clawed his way back to the top after personal and professional near collapse. Both are at the peak of their powers and about to collide on the set of Guys and Dolls. Sinatra had lobbied hard for the role of Sky Masterson. For him, the part was more than just a character. It was validation, a chance to prove he could carry both the box office and the romance. But the studio, chasing youth in Brando's magnetic star power, gave the lead to Marlon instead. Sinatra was relegated to the supporting role of Nathan Detroit, a wound to his pride that would never fully heal. From the very first read-through, tension crackled between the two. Crew members recalled Brando's cool detachment, his slow, deliberate manner clashing violently with Sinatra's need for speed and precision. Sinatra was used to doing things his way, one take, in the can, move on. Brando, ever the perfectionist, would agonize over lines and emotional truth, pushing scenes into double digits for takes. It wasn't long before Sinatra started calling Brando mumbles behind his back, mocking his method and mannerisms, while Brando responded with subtle digs, raising his eyebrow at Sinatra's musical prowess, muttering that real acting isn't about hitting the note, it's about hitting the nerve. It was more than professional rivalry. It was personal, each seeing in the other something to despise and something to fear. Set warfare, games, insults, and retaliation. The set of Guys and Dolls soon became a battlefield of egos. Sinatra, used to dominating any room, found himself overshadowed by Brando's quiet intensity. He began finishing his takes and storming off, refusing to stick around for Brando's coverage, a blatant breach of professional courtesy that complicated filming and infuriated the crew. Brando, meanwhile, sensed the resentment and decided to push Sinatra's buttons. He would intentionally flub takes, drag out scenes, and do anything he could to disrupt Sinatra's rhythm. According to accounts from assistants, Brando made it a point to get inside Sinatra's head. He hated being upstaged, Brando later admitted, so I gave him a front row seat. Their Cold War reached a breaking point during the filming of the Havana sequence. After hours of retakes on a complex dance number, Sinatra erupted in front of the cast and crew, declaring, "How many times can you hear action and cut before you lose your mind? I'll be in my dressing room." As he stormed out, Brando called after him, "Don't worry, Frank. We can always dub your voice if we need to." For Sinatra, whose voice was his most prized possession, this was an unpardonable slight. "You're dead to me, kid," Sinatra reportedly spat. From that moment, the lines were drawn. On set, they played their roles. Off camera, they became strangers, sabotage behind the scenes. What started as a set feud quickly escalated into a Hollywood Cold War. Sinatra, with his Rat Pack connections and deep roots in the industry, quietly worked to undermine Brando's career. Studio execs began whispering that Brando was difficult, that his best days were behind him. Brando, for his part, found doors that had once swung open for him beginning to close. But Brando wasn't naive. He understood how Hollywood power worked, and he understood Sinatra's unique position. He was the king, Brando wrote in later years. He could make you or break you with a phone call. For much of the 1960s, as Brando's career stumbled through box office disappointments and personal scandals, Sinatra's star rose ever higher. Industry insiders still debate whether Sinatra's shadow truly stretched that far, but for Brando, the sense of being watched, of being quietly blacklisted, was very real. The Godfather and the Revenge of Brando. Brando's career is on life support. Studios see him as washed up, unreliable, and too much trouble. Then comes The Godfather. Director Francis Ford Coppola fights to cast Brando as Vito Corleone over the objections of Paramount execs. Objections fueled, some say, by whispers from Sinatra himself. Why did Sinatra care? The character of Johnny Fontaine, a struggling singer who needs the Don's help to save his career, was a not-so-subtle nod to Sinatra's own rumored mob ties. Sinatra had famously threatened author Mario Puzo, furious at the perceived caricature. The idea that Brando, his old adversary, might embody the very Don who had saved Fontaine was too much. Sources close to the production claim Sinatra lobbied hard behind the scenes to block Brando's casting. But Coppola stood his ground. Brando won the part, reinvented himself as the Don, and delivered one of the greatest performances in film history, winning an Oscar and forever cementing his legend. Sinatra, forced to watch from the sidelines, reportedly seethed as Brando enjoyed his triumphant comeback. It was a personal and professional blow, one that would echo for years. Mob connections and real-world threats. By the mid-1970s, the Brando-Sinatra feud had spilled out of the soundstage and into darker territory. Sinatra's relationships with organized crime were an open secret in Hollywood. Brando, newly revived by The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris, began receiving ominous calls, thinly veiled threats that he traced back, through the grapevine, to Sinatra's world. Brando's friends recalled the actor hiring extra security during certain productions, and director Coppola was warned by studio heads that Brando's presence might invite unwanted complications. Jack Nicholson, after working with Brando on the Missouri Breaks, was allegedly warned by Sinatra himself, "You're keeping dangerous company, kid." Even Elia Kazan, who had launched Brando's career, reported a strange, cryptic phone call after announcing a new project with the actor. "The chairman doesn't approve," the caller said before hanging up. For Brando, these threats were more than showbiz posturing. He understood the risk of crossing a man like Sinatra. But rather than retaliate in kind, he waited. Patience is its own form of power, Brando would later reflect. The secret tape in the cold piece. In 1979, the power dynamics shifted again. At a private party in Palm Springs, Sinatra was recorded, unknowingly, unleashing a furious, expletive-laden rant about Brando. He called him a no-talent punk, boasted about his ability to end careers, and made veiled threats that, if released, could have destroyed his reputation. The existence of the tape soon reached Brando, who made a calculated decision. Instead of leaking it, he let Sinatra know he had it, creating a stalemate, mutually assured destruction. The feud cooled. For the next few years, both men circled each other warily at industry events, never sharing the same stage, never speaking in public. The tape was never released, but its mere existence kept the balance of power intact. The face-to-face showdown. A benefit for children's charities at the Waldorf Astoria brings Brando and Sinatra together for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Neither man can decline the invitation. As Sinatra enters, he spots Brando across the room and turns to leave. But this time, Brando takes the initiative, crossing the room, extending a hand, and leaning in for a hushed conversation. Witnesses, including actor Alan Alda, described the moment as electric, with Sinatra visibly uncomfortable and Brando calm, almost gentle. What did Brando say? He would later hint, in his autobiography, "Some men can't handle the truth, especially men who've spent a lifetime building their own myth." According to confidants, Brando let Sinatra know that he'd preserved evidence, tapes, documents, names, that would come to light should anything ever happen to him. It was checkmate. After that exchange, Sinatra left the event, canceling his performance. Brando stayed, refusing to discuss the encounter. Brando breaks the silence. For years, Brando refused to speak publicly about Sinatra, but in the final decade of his life, as old rivalries faded, he began to open up, just a little. In interviews, he praised Sinatra's voice as once in a generation, but was unsparing about the man behind the music. Frank lived in a fortress of fame, but he always feared the truth would seep through the cracks, Brando wrote. When Sinatra died in 1998, Brando issued a short, loaded statement. America has lost a voice, but some stories remain unsung. Friends later said that Brando, despite everything, kept a photograph of Sinatra in his study, not out of affection, but as a reminder of the only man in Hollywood who could truly challenge him. Legacy. What's most fascinating about the Brando-Sinatra feud isn't just the bitterness or the threats. It's the way their conflict shaped them both, in Hollywood itself. Brando, forever the outsider, forced Sinatra to reckon with an era that was slipping away. Sinatra, with his networks of power, made Brando's path harder, but also perhaps sharper. Their story is about more than ego. It's about the nature of celebrity, the price of power, and the cost of living in the spotlight. Sinatra built an empire on charisma and connections. Brando tore down the illusions, insisting on honesty, even when it hurt. In the end, their feud wasn't just personal, it was existential, a clash of philosophies about what it meant to matter in America. The Brando-Sinatra rivalry was more than just a feud. It was a clash of eras and egos, a secret war that changed Hollywood forever. Their legend endures, shaped by all that was left unsaid. Which side do you believe truly won? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's golden age. Remember, behind every Hollywood smile is a shadow, and the greatest dramas are the ones history almost managed to keep hidden.